Hi, I'm Sabine, the Purpose Lawyer. Thank you for listening. Please don't forget to like and subscribe to this podcast. It really goes a long way. It helps us spread the good word. And if you or anybody you know is in the market for legacy or estate planning or business or trademarks, please reach out to our firm. It's the Ambitious Legacy Firm. We are licensed in New York and New Jersey, but we have service partners in all states. So we'd love to work with you. Asset protection, legacy planning, trademarks. We got you. All right. So it's the ambitiouslegacyfirm.com. Now let's get into the episode. Welcome to another episode of the Ambitious Legacy Podcast. I am your host, Sabine, the Purpose Lawyer. Thank you for listening and thank you for helping me be on purpose. All right, guys. So today I wanted to do a session on true stories told to me, right? A few different stories that, I would say multiple times a week, I get calls from people with situations that happen in their family and they're looking to clean up the situation. And sometimes I get messages from my IG followers who just want to share with me the things that they've heard because it gives me fuel to kind of help educate you guys on things that are going on out there. So let's talk about some true stories told to me. So the first one is one that someone left me a DM telling me. So thank you so much to listeners. If you guys have stories, let me know. I am open to hear them so that I can help, remix them and put them back out to everyone to help with these situations so that everyone could avoid falling into these pitfalls. So the first one is this man was married 20 years to his first wife, and that situation didn't work out. He got divorced, and when he got divorced, after some time he got with someone else. They were together for 7 years, and then unfortunately he passed away, right? But unfortunately, he had not changed the beneficiaries on any of his assets. So what does that mean? That means that his life insurance was remained as the first wife as the beneficiary. So when he passed away, she received the life insurance. His retirement accounts remained with the first wife as the beneficiary. So when he passed away, she received his retirement account and his bank accounts and any other accounts that he has. Everything that he had went to the first wife. So the second wife got zero, zilch, nothing. And some people might think that, hey, if you're a first wife or if you know a first wife, you're probably like, yeah, that's great. But if you're a second wife, you're like, oh, really? Heck to the no, right? So these are types of things. This first story just highlights why you have to be proactive in managing the things that you own, right? It's not a passive seat. If things change in your life, you have to make updates. You have to go back and say, okay, I had this whole situation that I was living, this was my life at the time, but things change. What do I need to change? What do I need to update? And you may not have all the answers or have all the tools, but know that there's something that you need to be doing and seek out advice and information. Not to say that maybe he wanted his first wife to get something. I don't know about children, if there was children in this story or scenario, but being that that being the case, you never know. Maybe he didn't want the first wife to get something, but I would imagine that if he was divorced, that he probably didn't want his first wife to get everything that he had. So that's the first story told to me, right? Moral of the story, update your beneficiaries. And I've talked about this before, but this was a real life stories that I was able to share with you. The next one, true stories told to me, is a man who was married. He had a second wife, had a second wife and children from the first marriage. Oh, I remember. So the individual was married. He had a first marriage. They owned a home, had children. Children was raised in the home, and then after some time, I think the first wife passed away. Then he ended up remarrying with a new wife. Put the new wife's name on the house that he raised his kids in. So presumably that house would be an inheritance from those children of that first marriage from their mom because they bought the house together. But he put his new wife on the house, on the deed to the house. So now he passes away. And he passes away, didn't make any changes. And so the new wife gets 100% of that home, right? But the children were still sort of in good, had a good relationship with that wife, and we're trying to sort of get that estate sort of planned, like, okay, make a plan for your estate so that if you pass away, we at least would now get the home, right? Unfortunately, before that happened, she passed away. So now that home that they grew up in, that their parents purchased together, will go to the second wife's children, and they get nothing. And this is a true story that I couldn't help, the person, because this was already after the fact. And so in those type of situations, it's really up to the individuals who receive the asset to be to say, okay, well, this should have rightfully been yours, or this would have rightfully been yours. But even in the case that they do that, they're now faced with I'm trying to figure out how the best way to say this. They could be faced with a tax issue, right? Because if it's an asset that's more than the allowed amount, 20 something thousand, it's going to be a gift that's not allowed. And so if the gift is not allowed, it's going to reduce the amount that they can leave during their lifetime, right? So if they're multimillionaires, obviously it's going to affect their estate tax. If they're not multimillionaires, it might not be a problem, but you're relying on somebody saying, oh, I got this gift, which is real estate, and nowadays, and it was in New York, so a couple of 100,000, probably upwards of 500,000. I believe it was in the borough, so it could be even close to a million or above. And you're relying on somebody who just got this surprise inheritance that from their parent, to be like, oh, well, the right thing to do would be to now make sure that you guys either get something or get it, or whatever the case is. Probably not really likely, right? I don't think so. So that's another true story that I was told that's kind of crazy. And I want you guys to see why I get so fired up about this and motivated to really tell people about this stuff, because I'm hearing these things all the time and I'm like, oh my God, and I just want to jump out of my chair, but I can't do anything about it. I can't do anything about it because it's already too late. So that's why I'm always on my soapbox about, listen, this is what you got to do ahead of time, right? So the next story of true stories told to me is about this woman. She had 5 kids. Her kids were probably older teens into young adults, right? But 5 kids, and decided to get married to another man who's not the father of her children or any of her children. Which is fine, right? She worked, this multiple jobs, saved money, whatever the case. They bought a house together. And then, unfortunately, she ended up passing away. Her portion of the house goes to the new husband, nothing for the kids. And the husband wasn't fond of the kids, so gave them nothing or left them nothing. He ends up passing away years later, and then his portion goes to his family member that he added to the deed. So absolutely nothing for these 5 kids, unless the heirs decide that they want to make things right. But again, another situation, no plan put in place, or the wrong type of planning, or holding the assets in the wrong way. Therefore, those assets go to maybe not the wrong hands, but I'm sure all of the assets were not intended, that it wasn't intended to disinherit all of her children that she had. And that's an unfortunate situation. But this could have been resolved with simply the way that you held the deed to the property and having a will or a trust in place to pass on those assets. Yeah, you guys should know, if you listen to the show, I talk about this stuff all the time on what you can kind of do to avoid these sort of situations. But definitely estate planning. And I don't want you to think that. So I say estate planning, right? And sometimes people are like, Sabine, I don't even know what that means. With all the things that I say, sometimes people still don't understand. And I get it. Could be overwhelming. It's a lot of sort of words that we're not used to in our everyday vernacular. But bottom of the line is that it's a plan that you put in place that says where your assets will go if something were to happen to you. And it's something that needs to be legally documented, and it has to be clear, and it needs to be in the hands of the right people, because if not, then a whole host of other things could happen. But at least having a plan in place and putting all these pieces together help avoid these type of messes. And but the first story was really just putting down a beneficiary. That's literally calling your insurance company and saying, hey, if I die, I want this person to get it. What do I need to sign? What do I need to fill out? Or calling your bank, or going online into your investment account and, you know, saying, if I die, I want this person to receive my assets or be in control of my account. It is that simple sometimes, right? That sometimes could be enough to avoid some of these scenarios. Sometimes it's not, but sometimes it is that simple, right? All right, so that was the third story. So now the last story that I'm going to share with you guys today is about so this man, he passed away, and he was married to a woman. He married to his wife. His wife lives overseas. They got married overseas, but what you should know is that even if you're married overseas, usually the country that you're in will recognize that marriage if it was a valid marriage overseas. So like, for instance, in the US, if you got married in one of the islands or a different country, if you have valid documentation that you are married, they will recognize you as married in the US. So if you get assets here, they're going to recognize you as married, so just be mindful of that. It is just because you didn't get married here doesn't mean you're not married here, right? So he was married on he was married on an island, but was living here, had assets here, had multiple investment properties, and had a property that he owned with his wife here. And so he had a daughter out prior to this marriage, and the wife also had her own children prior to this marriage. And so he passes away, and now his daughter has to fight with the wife and her children regarding the assets that were her dad's, that were presumably at least partially entitled to her. And so because he didn't have a plan, she basically had to go to court, petition the court to get authority to act on behalf of her dad's estate, and then try to find what assets he has, because some of the properties that he has overseas, she's not even aware of where they are. She just knows that they exist, but has no further details. And the individuals with the details won't give her the information because obviously she's going to be entitled to at least partial ownership. So that's another messy situation where it's like some of it worked out because she did get some assets, but it's partially, some of the assets are lost because of the fact that she doesn't know where they are. People who have the information will give it to her, and she's not in that location. Like, so if something's going on another island, which happens all the time, it's really hard for you to navigate those waters. You kind of have to go there. You might have to get a lawyer there, or figure out the whole government legal system, how all of this kind of works in order for you to even get a hold of ownership information, right? And then you have to go through whatever the process is. So not only do you have to do the estate set up and deal with the estate here, but then you have to also deal with it overseas. And so these type of situations where people have properties that are owned different countries, different states, really a trust is a vehicle to kind of avoid having to go to these different places and probate. So if you have like a US trust or even a foreign trust, but you have your trust own all of your assets wherever they're situated, at least you have one thing to deal with, essentially, right? So everything's owned by the trust, let's deal with this, versus this is owned in this country, this is owned in this country, this is owned partially with this person, partially with that person. It becomes such a mess for people to untangle. Imagine if it's complicated for you, then imagine being complicated for the person who you leave behind, or the person who's left behind, to try to figure all of this stuff out. And it's stressful, right? It's stressful, it's burdensome. All of that. So moral of the story is, right, these are true stories. These things happen every single day, and we could really avoid all these situations with very simple planning, right? Very simple planning avoids these situations. Really, the only time we get into complex planning is when there's a lot of assets and we have tax issues, right? So you can go from the very basic to the most complex, right? With structures and entities and this and that, or you could literally select and update your beneficiaries, right? There's so much that can be done, but you wouldn't know unless you sat down with an attorney or you really looked at your particular situation and circumstances to get a good idea of what the different plans and options are for you. So if this sort of, sparked your interest or had you thinking like, maybe this is something I need help with, or I know somebody who might need help with this, really reach out to my firm, the Ambitious Legacy Firm. These are the types of issues, situations we deal with all the time. We'd be happy to talk to you, help you, guide you. And if it's something that we cannot help you with, then we will certainly refer you to our network. And I hope this was helpful for you, and I will see you next time.